Yeah.
I'm home, it's my time, give me room, let me shine. I'm so high off alive, all my dreams came alive. My reflection is me, and I like what I see. Give me room, let me shine, let me shine.
Welcome to Radiant Voices, where creators and visionaries are sharing their stories. I am your host, Amber Turner. Thank you so much for taking a moment out of your day to be here with me today. We all live busy lives, so I am so grateful you are spending it with me right now. This episode of Radiant Voices is brought to you by Polish at Home, your on-site beauty provider. Polish at Home is now offering cosmetic teeth whitening. Start the new year off with a radiant smile. No pun intended. They are taking you to a next level in 2018. Easy, convenient beauty right on demand. Download the app, now available in the Google Play Store. Making a Difference dinner is literally this week. Can you believe it? I hope you got your tickets for this incredible night. Join us for Making a Difference dinner, hosted by Emmy Award-winning reporter and KOAA's Elizabeth Watts in Colorado Springs on January 13th, 2018. So I am really excited to hear Dr. Temple Grandin speak. We have an amazing lineup of people supporting this cause. For more information on this amazing event, visit makingadifferencedinner.com. So today on the show, we have Richard Gordon. Richard is the author of The Secret Nature of Matter and Quantum Touch, The Power to Heal. Richard teaches quantum touch around the globe. So welcome to the show, Richard.
Hey, Amber, it's my joy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited to have you on the show because I find your book really fascinating in the whole concept of quantum touch.
It's something that surprised me so much in my life. I would never have believed that this was the direction I would take.
Really? That's interesting. But before we get into your book, I would love to learn more about your life before quantum touch because I read that you were a skeptic. But experiences and different encounters change your perspective. So can you share with the audience a little bit of background on what led you to quantum touch?
Well, it's a really long story. I've been at it for over 40 years in the field. Back when I was in college, I was an atheist, but then I realized that was kind of dumb because I didn't want to be against something I didn't believe in. So I just called myself a non-theist and thought, well, if God knocks on my door, I'll pay attention. But I had my door knocked down so many times I couldn't ignore it. I went to a doctor when I was 24, and he said, yes, you've got a lot of problems, but nothing's bad enough yet to treat, so why don't you come back when you get worse? And I thought that was one of the stupidest things I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
Like, to wait till your engine freezes
Right.
up, and then we'll change the oil.
That's crazy.
And so I went to a holistic health school called the Cristo School of Natural Healing. I studied the topics at the school and was so impressed by something called polarity therapy. I ended up writing a book on it that was a bestseller throughout the 1980s. It came out in 1978. And it's an amazing therapy. But just before the book came out, I met a gentleman named Robert Rasmussen who was doing energy healing himself. And he showed me things that I could not believe. He had my girlfriend up at the front of the room, and he was telling tall tales about dissolving tumors and spontaneously healing broken bones and crazy things. And I thought the guy's just completely full of it. And then he just touches my girlfriend's spine, and we're all looking at her major scoliosis, and her hips just roll right back into alignment, and her cranial bones, the base of the skull, just shifts, and the shoulders move. And within 8 or 10 minutes, half of her scoliosis had straightened out. My jaw was on the floor, and I assumed that he had a rare gift, and I was never going to learn this, nor would anyone else. But in the course of the day, I saw that I had some very rudimentary skill at being able to do this. And as the years passed, I eventually took over in his retirement. I gave his work a name, Quantum Touch. I evolved it radically. I took out all the woo and the weird stuff out of it and made it much more accessible, powerful, and easy to learn than what it had been previously. And that is what most people think of with quantum touch. It's a form of energy healing, hands-on healing. And most people who are excited about this work are excited because it accelerates the healing process. It brings down pain very rapidly. We just conducted a study on that. It brings down inflammation, and it improves mood and a lot of other good things. And yet the work continued to evolve over the decades. And so my Quantum Touch, The Power to Heal book teaches people how to give each other this kind of a session. And that was my second book. But it gets really interesting as you go further.
Mhm. So I also read that you have like no personal interest in religion, but are passionate about spirituality and science. Can you explain what that means to you?
Of course, spirituality, rather, religion is what's written in a book.
Mhm.
Spirituality is about internal experience, the
Mhm.
connection to source, connection to oneness, connection to love that may be 1,000 times more profound than could ever be put into words. So if experiences are light years beyond anything that could be spoken or written, then a book cannot begin to contain the essence of the great mystery of who and what we really are.
Mhm.
And so I've had so many experiences that have shown me clearly that we're much more than we thought we were.
Yeah.
Then it has become evident to me that spirituality is something living and growing and evolving and changing. And yet religion often is about control. Now, certainly people can have spiritual experiences with religion. I'm not knocking religion per se, but religion as a dogma, that's where the problems really come in,
Mhm.
especially when it causes people to be fearful or guilty.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So I want to jump into the book before we get into your organization because Quantum Touch is practiced by like over 1,400 certified practitioners around the globe and in 50 countries. So I really want to talk about that. But before we get into that, please share with us about your book.
Well, the new book, it just took me decades to figure out. I would not have believed what was in the book even 2 years ago. It just took me by surprise. About 10 years ago, I discovered that I could meditate and do the healing work 2 or 3 times faster without touching people, regardless of distance. That book was called Quantum Touch 2.0, The New Human, outlining a series of what we can just best describe as new human abilities. Even being able to share gifts with one another, or work on multiple people simultaneously, or multiple conditions simultaneously. And evolving out of that book was this new book, The Secret Nature of Matter. It was Thanksgiving 2 years ago, and my friend Daniel told me that if you make a movie of yourself doing a healing session, people watching the movie will experience healing. And I said to him, I said, that sounds crazy. I find that very hard to believe. He said, test it. So I made a video of myself meditating to cause structural alignment. Now, 99% of the people interested in my work don't care about structural alignment, and I understand that. But I use it as a clear empirical test to see if I'm getting a result or not. Almost everybody has twisted hips or twisted cranial bones. And the cranial bones are at the base of the skull called the occipital ridge. Now, when people's hips are twisted, it may look like they have a short leg, and a lot of people think that's what the case is. And people are often born with this twist where often when you measure them, the right hip looks high in the back and the left looks high in the front. And the reason I'm interested in this is that it's a clear demonstration that your consciousness can affect the outer reality. So if I meditate and somebody's hips are 2 inches out and I meditate for 5 or 10 seconds and the hips go in all the way, then that's a yes. And if they don't move, that's a no. And the way Galileo, for example, knew that the Earth went around the sun was by looking at the phases of Venus. It had phases like the moon, and therefore he could make the discernment that the Earth was going around the sun. And similarly, with Einstein, they wanted to look at gravitational lensing if the position of stars changed during a solar eclipse. And that was how they could tell. The way I can tell that we can put our consciousness into matter is by untwisting people's posture. Now, these are things that are considered physiologically impossible. When a person is standing balanced, you can't do anything to cause your own hips to untwist. Chiropractors will put a person on their side and they'll crunch them with a lot of sound, and it'll last for 2 or 3 days. But with this method, it usually takes one tiny touch of a charged object along with intention to cause that untwisting. And the implications of this are so vast, it could change our identity as human beings and our understandings of science.
That's so interesting. We had Jenny Nadler on the show before, and she was pretty much saying the same thing. I was like, I've never heard this before. Like growing up, when I was growing up, people would say all the time, like, you're affecting my vibe. And, I just thought that was kind of like things that people said. And now as I get older and I become more evolved, I like to say, is that's really a thing, like vibrations and energy and all of that kind of stuff, all those sayings is really a thing.
There really is something to that. For instance, Joe Rogan, a comedian commentator, likes to say that when he goes to the Ice House, which is the oldest comedy club in the country, he says you just feel like the laughter is coming off the walls.
Mm-hmm.
And you go into, and you may have experienced this, and I certainly have, you go into a courtroom or the Department of Motor Vehicles, and you just feel this misery
Yeah.
coming off the walls. People don't really want to be there.
Right.
And it's very painful. And similarly, you can see that massage practitioners or Reiki practitioners and many others may say that they feel tired or drained at the end of a session. Mm-hmm. Because what's happening is they match the energy field of the person or the room. This is how it works. So all healing, and this is a big generalization, but I believe it's true, all healing is a function of resonance and entrainment. And that means when two things vibrate at different frequencies, either the lower frequency will match the high one will come to match the low one, or they meet in the middle. A good energy practitioner learns to continuously raise their own vibration, primarily through breathing and body awareness exercises, but it can also be done through love and gratitude. So you can continually raise your vibration throughout the session, and you can only bring the other person up to match you. You never will come down to match them if you do this. Mm-hmm. And that's how it works. So with quantum touch, we teach people how to use breathing and body awareness exercises to continuously raise their own vibration, and then the other person matches your vibration, and then their body and spiritual intelligence does the healing that it wants to do. And it may not even be what you were thinking of doing, but the body will do its own healing.
Wow, that's interesting. So I would love to know more about your organization, because you offer to teach quantum touch to others. So when and why did you make the decision to start an organization?
Well, there's only one of me last time I looked. And I realized that I just can't go everywhere and teach everybody what I want to do. So replicating myself seemed like the best solution. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people wanted to start teaching the work after attending my workshop over and over again. They just loved doing it and loved the results and wanted to share it with others. So we had to create a certification program of people becoming practitioners and instructors. So we have instructors teaching, and it's going everywhere. We have practitioners, as you mentioned, in over 50 countries around the world. My books are in 17 languages, and it's only growing. I just got an invitation to go to Romania and Tibet
Wow.
And so I can't go everywhere, but and it's it's something that has to get out there to the rest of the world because it's such a good solution. It's not enough to just know it. You need to bring it out and have it researched at universities.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what does the program look like for those who are wanting to learn quantum touch?
Well, they take they can watch a video of me teaching a workshop, then they can take some live workshops and take some advanced workshops, and they learn how to do it. They document their 60 hours of sessions, and then they sign the papers and they become certified practitioners and just practice and utilize it well. That's all.
And you're obviously very passionate about quantum touch and the impact it can have on other people's lives, hence why you started your organization. So, what advice can you give others who have a similar passion on how they too can share it with the world?
Well, I would suggest whatever it is you're passionate about, really take that passion seriously. It's a tremendous gift that you care about something enough. And genius comes when you pay attention to detail. So if you are passionate about energy healing or graphics or riding a bicycle, it doesn't matter what it is. If you dive into it ever more deeply and find as much joy and connection as you can with that experience, you will develop your own genius in that area because you will make discoveries, tiny discoveries. It's interesting because when I started the Quantum Touch program, one of the things I added to the certification program was asking people, what are 5 insights you've had yourself about this work? Maybe they're things that I didn't teach because I want people to do their own exploration, their own discovery. And when they realize how powerful their love is and what they need to do to focus and amplify the energy to make it ever stronger and ever better, it opens up doors that we didn't even know were closed.
Hmm. I really like that. Oh, that's amazing. So, I would love to know what led you to know that spreading the power to heal was your mission and part of your purpose. And what was it like to shift from being a skeptic to now writing books and teaching it?
Well, as you can imagine, since we're talking well over 40 years period of time, it's been a process
Hmm.
of openings and discoveries and what I call life shock experiences. And in one dramatic experience, I had watched Bob Rasmussen move bones around, and my friend brought a rabbit to my house. It was Easter time. It was really cute, hopping around my house until I realized there's these pellets all over the floor. So I had to capture the bunny and put him back in a box. So I cornered the rabbit, and when I had the rabbit under my hands, the rabbit was trembling, probably figuring it was going to become dinner. And I thought, well, why don't I try running the energy? That's what we call the breathing and body awareness exercise of using quantum touch. We call it running energy. So I ran the energy into the rabbit, and the rabbit stopped trembling, relaxed, and then pushed against my hand gently and flipped itself over on its back and spread its front legs forward and its back legs back like it was sunning itself on the beach in Hawaii. That was a shocking experience.
Hmm.
A week later, I was down in Los Angeles teaching a workshop of about 5 or 6 people that wanted to know how to do this work. And a woman came in who had massive osteoporosis. She was completely hunched over, looking at me through the top of her eyes, just completely bent over. And I had her put a shirt on backwards, and her spine looked like dinosaur bones. Some were off this side, that side. There was chaos in the position of these bones, and some of them stuck out really far, and others were indented. And I worked on her for over an hour, and people would come by and watch what I was doing, and they'd say, is that looking better, or is that my imagination? And then they'd come back another 10 minutes and say, I'm pretty sure that's looking better. And they say, oh my God, that's looking a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the session, every vertebra was in a totally straight line. The ones who were sticking out had come in, the ones that were in had come out. She stood up, and I suddenly realized she was a very tall woman. And just when she stood up, as if it was choreographed in a movie, the double doors opened into the living room. Her daughter walked in and burst out crying, saying, Mommy, you're standing up straight. And I was so shocked by that experience that I was sitting at a friend's house on the floor, leaning against a wall with my head in my hands, thinking, that didn't happen. And then I had to review every one of those steps, step by step, to say it did happen. Now, if you got another half an hour, I'll tell you another series of life shock experiences, but there was no one thing that took me from being the atheist to the person I am now, who is ready to show scientists that the theory of consciousness and the quantum theory is completely incomplete, that the mind is not confined to the brain, that our love has impact, and that we have no idea of what our limits are. And everything points to us being spiritual beings and not just meat machines.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah, that's crazy. Like I actually am a big fan of Inspire Nation, that
Mm-hmm.
show, and I saw the episode where you were on there, and I heard the stories that you were telling, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, there are so many discoveries to be made. And one of my joys is to see it researched. And one of my frustrations is that there are very few universities in the world that are open to even looking at things that I can show people in seconds that are empirically obvious.
Hmm. Why do you think that is?
Uh, well, when people attain high positions and their fame, fortune, and career is based upon something I'm showing them not being true, cognitive dissonance is a bitch.
Yeah.
People don't like to have their beliefs and the reality going into a head-on collision with one another.
Hmm.
And so when you show somebody that's empirically obvious, I've watched people go into major contortions. I remember I was at a consciousness conference in Tucson, and by the way, they haven't let me speak there yet because I'm going to blow them away. But I had a sign my friend made for me. He's a scientist who's very familiar with my work. And the sign said, Consciousness affects matter, free demo. And so some guy comes up to me and he's got his arms crossed and his head cocked and he says, Okay, what do you got? And I said, Well, I'm going to untwist your hips without touching you. He said, Well, that's impossible. I said, Great, hold that thought. And I said, let me first measure to see where you are so we can compare. And I said, oh my God, you're out further than anybody I've seen in years. His his left hip in the front was about 4.5 inches higher than the other. And so I stood back and I said, okay, make it tough for me. And why don't you lock your hips? He tries to stand tight and I meditate and I measure. Oh, look at this. Your hips are totally even. He said, well, of course, you used reverse psychology on me. And I said, well, do you consider yourself an empirical scientist or faith-based? Now, that was a rude question. He said, well, empirical, of course. I said, great. Then why don't you watch me do this 5 or 10 more times and see if I'm using reverse psychology? And he said, if I let myself believe this just happened, everything I know about science would fall like a house of cards. Well, as an empirical scientist, don't you want to let the cards fall where they will? And he thought for a moment and he said, not today. And that was the end of our conversation because he just turned and walked away.
Wow, that's
And
interesting.
I've seen this happen so many times, and it's both funny and sad. And just excuse me for a second, but Galileo wrote this letter, and he wrote, "My dear Kepler, when the learned steadfastly refuse to look through the telescope, what shall we make of this? Shall we laugh or shall we cry?" And that's exactly what this is.
Mhm. Wow. So I want to shift gears a little bit. From starting your own organization, can you share what was a major challenge that you faced? If you faced any, I mean, I would think
Yeah,
so.
the biggest challenge was finding the right business partner because I am one of those creative people who is moderately to heavily disorganized, and I kind of dislike bureaucracy, and I'd rather live in the mountains of Mexico
Sounds like me, that's why I'm laughing.
than, than to create a bureaucracy. But I ran into somebody at one of my lectures. Actually, she just identified me, and it was a perfect fit. And she took over and started running the company and has done so today. Jennifer Taylor is the uh, chief magical officer, as well as the CEO, the CFO, the COO. And she keeps things moving and keeps it working. And now we have a lot of employees, and I don't know how any of it works. I don't want to know, but I'm involved in the creation of the products and the services, the creative side of it all, developing the curriculum. That's the stuff that excites me, and I'm excited about the research that's going to happen. We just had one study that was published with 41 people with really high levels of pain. Most of the pain was from fibromyalgia, arthritis, or accidents. A single quantum touch session provided on average a 67.4% reduction in pain. But here's the thing that excited me the most. Out of the 41 people, there were 50 pain conditions listed on their forms. All 50 conditions responded to the energy healing. That's 50 out of 50. Placebos work about 1/3 of the time. Now consider there's three primary avenues, three mechanisms by which the body can utilize extraordinary self-healing to trigger extraordinary self-healing. One is placebo, but it requires deception and dishonesty, and nobody likes to be lied to. The second one is energy healing, is another avenue to stimulate the body's self-healing mechanism. But I discovered a third. And the third is another modality I created called self-created health that teaches people how to find and release emotional causes of conditions. And when you do that, not only do the symptoms disappear, but the people will feel incredibly grateful for having had the condition, that the body had the ability to be sick, not as a dysfunction, but a communication from their higher consciousness. And it took me 30 years to figure that one out, by the way.
That's interesting. I really think too, like, to go back to what you said, that finding someone that kind of fits you as far as like finding a business partner is
Mm-hmm.
very, very challenging because it's pretty much like a marriage and
It
having
is.
like being a business partner and like having um especially with something as heavy as like a business where you have money involved, employees, instead of having two children, you have maybe 50 children, which are your employees. And so I can definitely see that as being a major challenge is finding the perfect business partner.
Well, she found me.
Uh,
I was I was giving a lecture at a bookstore in Maui, and I was bombing with the audience. Like I'd say, before I got into energy healing, I was over 6 feet tall and I had straight blonde hair. And I'm the short guy with curly hair. And everybody had this straight face looking grim, except for Jennifer, and she was smiling and laughing at my jokes. And we connected, and it turned out that she didn't like being a programmer anymore, and she ended up just completely taking over. And she's somebody with tremendous integrity and a really good work ethic. So it was a perfect match.
Excellent, excellent. And before we get into some wrap up questions, I would love to know what was your biggest victory from your books or your organization?
Well, I think it's an ongoing victory because even though we have practitioners in 50 countries and we're just starting to get some research, I feel like the biggest victory is yet to come because I have this vision by the year 2040, this expectation that we can get this researched at every university, practiced and utilized in every hospital, and taught in every school. These are basic human skills that everybody can learn. And so, yes, we have a very wide footprint around the world, but I would like to reach 1 billion people.
Mhm.
So that's our biggest victory, is yet to come.
Beautiful. I love that. I love that. So, where can people connect with you online?
You can go to quantumtouch.com and you can find out about all our workshops, our instructors, where they are, our practitioners. We've got a fabulous newsletter that comes out. It has been once a week. We're going to make it every 2 weeks. It's just too much in there each time. So we're going to but it's great newsletters. And we've got a lot of programs. We've got the basic quantum touch, the supercharging program. We've got the my newest book, The Secret Nature of Matter. We have a quantum touch pendant, which we didn't get to this, but I discovered conscious entanglement, that you can group objects together in your mind, and anything you do to any one of the objects spontaneously happens to all the objects. So we have this pendant that's being charged by about 5,000 people now, and we've had wonderful healing stories from people just utilizing their pendants. There's so much yet to do. So, as I said, the biggest victories are yet to come.
Excellent. Now, I have a few wrap up questions. And last week on the show, we had Marissa from Lupus Chick, and she shared her opinion on what a radiant voice means to her. Now, in your opinion, what makes a radiant voice?
Someone who's connected to their love, gratitude, and passion.
Hmm. I love that. That sounds great. I love that. And I'm a big advocate for learning the lesson from our struggles. I would love to know, what was a big obstacle you endured in your life? And in hindsight, what did you learn from it, either in your business or your personal life?
Well, what I see is that the obstacles that we encounter are not by chance. They are exactly in place so that we can grow spiritually.
Mhm.
And this is kind of too long a story for right now, but essentially, um, emotional honesty, I guess, would be the biggest one. To be more and more honest with myself. One day I woke up with severe flu symptoms, deep gurgling chest cough, fever, bones aching, sore throat. I thought I was going to be sick for at least a week. And I discovered in the process of searching within myself that I had been suppressing some emotion from a hurtful situation. When I encountered the anger and the hurt that was there, within an hour, all my flu symptoms were completely gone. And then it took me 30 years later to develop the entire system to help people find and release emotional causation. But that is something that I find that is perhaps one of the most important human skills possible, which is developing higher levels of self honesty.
I love that. Now, using your radiant voice, what has been your deepest life's insight? And what would you say to listeners to help them follow their passion?
Well, if you're not sure what your passion is, it isn't really very difficult to find. All you need to do is get a pen and paper out and write down every joyous, positive, wonderful, happy, pleasurable experience you've ever had in your life, and make your list of 50 or 200 of them, whatever you like, and then sit down with a friend and say, what themes do you see here? And they say,
Mhm.
oh, you love connecting with friends, or you love this or that. You love being in nature, or whatever that is. You see, our body, mind, spiritual intelligence is communicating to us all the time. Our higher self is always speaking to us through our emotions. And when you feel your best, when you feel deeply connected, when you feel most grateful or most exuberant, that's a message coming from your higher self. Yes, something is working here. Do more of that. And
Mhm.
so I would suggest first discover what your passion is, and then dive in and find a way to make more and more of your life about living that passion.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Richard, for joining me on today's show. It definitely was a pleasure. And I'm so grateful for your insight on today's episode.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Next time on the show, we'll be talking relationships, your life's mission, and everything in between for 2018. Some of my favorite topics. Again, many thanks and blessings to you all. And until next time, let your light shine.
Yeah. Come home, it's my time, give me room, let me shine. I'm so high off alive, all my dreams came alive. My reflection is me, and I like what I see. Give me room.